Welcome to Is This Thing On?
Thank you, sir.
Episode 2.
It's a good name.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I stole it from a Promise Ring song. Do you listen to the
Okay,
Promise
cool.
Ring?
Never listened to them.
They're like,
No.
to some people they might be like painfully emo, but I think they wrote some really good songs. And Is This Thing On is one of them. It's a really good, catchy, kind of stupid, but great song. Maybe I shouldn't have opened up with saying that I took the name from that, but hey, I guess the channel isn't big enough
You
for
might
them
get
to
sued.
come after me yet. They also don't exist as
Not yet. Not yet.
But maybe one day I'll have to change it, and we'll cross that road when it comes to it. But yeah, so we are here with I say we, it's just us two on this call, but whoever may be watching this, we got Gabe here, otherwise known as Ends, who just put out this tape, Spiral, off of Bud Tapes. Got the cool little like writing there. How's it feel seeing it?
It's cool.
You probably own a copy too. So.
Yeah, no, it's cool seeing it in your hands, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I gave it another listen today, and I listened to it a little bit yesterday. And yeah, I think it's weird because like I ordered the tape about a month ago. The tape or the EP came out probably about a month and a half ago now.
I
2 months or so, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But it was sitting in my pile of tapes, and I also had a pile of records and CDs because I don't know, through the process of moving, I had to just like move all that stuff around and wasn't really able to listen to it. But I was finally able to listen to it on tape. And that actually is going to kind of lead into our first question a bit. I was really curious about how like organic this project sounds. Like, comparatively to your last project, I feel like there's more of an emphasis on like acoustic elements than there were on the previous project, Leave.
Yeah.
Kind of, I guess, expand on that, and whether or not kind of you always kind of had tape in mind for this project.
Yeah, well, I mean, like the fact that it was released on tape was, I mean, Emmett just like who runs Bud Tapes, they just like offered for it to be released on tape, so that was just kind of why that happened. But yeah, I guess like these songs are after I became introduced into like the electroacoustic world from taking like the electroacoustic class at Western and learning about that sort of realm of music and the more experimental like textural composition is how I think about it, like movements of textures and gestures of sounds kind of abstractly, and just implementing more stuff, like more field recordings, using acoustic instruments and like by digitally processing them. Like when I made my first album, I didn't want to do anything digitally. I had like I added reverb and EQ and like the stock delay. Like it was all stock plugins in Reaper, and I love Reaper, and I still use the stock delay, and I actually love the stock EQ in Reaper, but the stock reverb is not very good. And but those were the only effects I used on the first album, really, and probably like compression and shit. But like I wanted all the sounds to be analog synths or vinyl samples. But then the second project, it's more about the relationships between analog and digital, and like acoustic and digital, got more about those relationships, like a computer with sounds of different kinds, you know. And there are soft synths in there too. I think there's some soft synths.
But... Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, some of the I use the granular synth and Reason like all the time. And that's kind of the main bridge between the natural analog world with the digital world. Granular processing of organic sounds. I like doing that sort of stuff. Um yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there is some sort of magic to it, like completely. And that was something like I really caught with this record in particular. Was like, I don't know, leave a lot of the songs on there kind of like remind me of like Berlin School electronic music, you know,
Yeah.
Kamish or whatever it's called. And this kind of like has a lot of different textures from a lot of different places. Like I think it's the first song and a couple other songs have what sound like tape loops on them. I don't know if you're actually doing physical tape loops or you're just taking a loop that you did from just recording straight into your
There's no actual right. There's no actual tape loops. I think that first song is a guitar. I think I used like a loop pedal and recorded it and then looped it like on the computer. Or I
Really?
think I sampled it and looped it that way. There are in that first song actually, there are one of the in the like second section, I recorded like 4 synth notes onto a tape machine and
Gotcha.
then sampled that into the granular synth. So there is tape involved. I think that's the only instance really of
Just
me
as
using tape on that whole EP.
Oh, really? It's that's very
Yeah.
surprising to me because like hearing that you recorded that like guitar part with like a like I'm assuming some sort of like guitar pedal looper um
Yeah.
or something like that. Like it really does have that like tape loop quality to it in that like it isn't necessarily like a perfectly rhythmic, 4x4 sort of loop. It does have this sort of like I want to say skipping quality to it
Mm.
that you get with tape loops. So yeah, I was just very
Yeah.
interested in that.
Like when I recorded it, it was kind of just like I think it was like one note ringing out and then like layered on more notes and it kind of created a rhythm. And
Okay.
the rhythm isn't like there's not I don't it's not really to a click. I think it might be actually. But if you added the click in, it wouldn't really sound right. So the meters, it is kind of like stagnated, I guess, or not totally consistent. So that might be why it feels like a tape loop since it has that like ambiguous rhythm to it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's something that's really interesting about like a lot of that I think that's what a lot of people like come to tape loops for is that very organic kind of rhythm. It's like you're not necessarily looking
Mhm.
for like a 4/4. You're maybe not even looking for a rhythm sometimes when you are listening to ambient music. There's this idea that it's supposed to be wallpaper, but it also there is ambient, and I feel like this is a quality of your work that commands your attention at times. Like there's parts of this that to me have a very strong sense of melody and harmony, as I think most great ambient does. um, I would kind of like to ask about was there like a particular, I don't know, focus you wanted to have for each song, or did each different song kind of arise out of different, you know, workflows per se?
Yeah. Well, definitely there are distinct workflows for each song. And yeah, I think like making music generally is pretty, you know, abstract and open what you're going for. But once you make the songs, you look back and you kind of organize it. So like looking back on it, there's definitely like certain songs are more analog focused and some are more digital focused and then some are more about focused on the relationships between those two worlds. And then also like some of the songs are more gestural and none of them are that gestural, but like more like changes are involved. And then some of them are more just kind of continuous, like slow moving, slower changing. So I kind of categorize them in my mind like that. Um, but and yeah, and then like it also depends on like what the starting point is for the songs. Like if it's a soft synth, if it's an analog synth, if it's a field recording, if it's an instrument, if it's a sample, like whatever the starting point is, and then like what DAW I'm deciding to use, like definitely changes, you know,
Yeah.
the whole song, like how the ideas flow. So, and I wanted the EP to kind of be varied enough that it has like a different little taste of these different approaches, but is still, you know, all connected and sounds like it's at least from a similar enough sonic, you know, sonic world for it to make sense.
Yeah, I think you certainly achieved that, honestly. Like, there was one song I really wanted to highlight, and I was actually very curious about.
Uh-huh.
The song Tomorrow, the song that
Oh,
finishes the
good. I
project.
love that. That's my favorite song on the EP.
It's really incredible, and
Thank you.
I think it perfectly displays exactly what you were just talking about. This idea that, like, you know, taking more gestural things, but also more melodic things like that. As soon as Tomorrow starts, I hear it and I think Hiroshi Yoshimura,
Yeah.
that kind of like Japanese environmental ambient. And
Yeah.
when that song came up, it's funny because like it took me a few listens to pick up on, well, maybe not a few listens, but I think the first time I listened to this project, it wasn't until that song that I figured out that there is something thematically organic or environmental about this. Whether
Hmm.
that's through, and I don't know if that was your intention per se, or if that's just the way, you know, it came out. But
Uh-huh.
you know, through the use of field recordings and the mixture of digital and analog sort of stuff and all those sort of sounds, I think Tomorrow is kind of like that perfect encapsulation of that movement, you know?
Yeah, well,
Um,
thank you.
yeah. So, and you kind of alluded to, I was going to ask about a bit more about this. So I'm kind of understanding that a lot of these songs weren't necessarily made in that similar of a time frame. Like I know because you were putting out singles here and there, not even here and there, on a weekly basis. You put out about 7 singles on your YouTube channel.
It didn't last very long.
I
I
mean,
didn't last long doing that.
but still 7 weeks is quite a bit. I mean, I'm not going to do the math on how many that is out of the year, but I mean, it is truly cool. So
Yeah.
so far this year, basically you put, or did you start it last year as well? Or was it
I mean, I
started
guess it was
this year?
2020.
I'd have to double check the dates myself as well. But regardless,
Yeah, I'm
like
not sure.
kind of in the span of a past year, you put out about like 14 songs. And as I, you know, personally in our discussions here and there, I've seen you have quite a lot. So what was kind of like the combing process through all
Yeah,
this
well, yeah,
stuff?
you've heard. Yeah, that was the worst part about this, and I just like it has been torturing me trying to. I mean, yeah, I mean, like it was really Emmett asked me, or you know, we talked about releasing something on their label, and I wanted to do like an ambient release, and I had it as like a plan in my head for so long, and I was just going over like the different ways it could manifest as either like a really like for a sec I wanted it to be like an hour and 25 minutes or something, and then I decided I want it to be like 4 songs long, and I was like, oh, maybe it should be like a little bit longer. And then like deciding what songs to use and everything, and whether it should be like a mixture of ambient and other and like more rhythmic songs and like all of this stuff. And I was just like, I have to do something. Like I just have to put something out. Like, and that process lasted way too long. And like that, some of those songs, I spent like on that first song, structure, or however you want to say it, since it's misspelled. That song I spent like I think like 8 months mixing.
Really?
Yeah, and like it's such a simple song. Like you wouldn't hear that, and I don't think the mix is good either. Like I'm not like it was just torture, and
Yeah. But at some point you just sorry, go on.
Well, it's just like I think it's it's a feeling that I'm sure anyone who makes music can sympathize with and knows that feeling.
Oh,
And but then some of the songs, and then like I think that the second song is the most recent song I made. I made that pretty close to before I released it.
Wow, okay.
And then and then those other songs, like it's within the span of like a year, I think. But I had a ton of like a collection of songs that was from the past like 2 years. And I don't think I used any of the older ones, but and then the singles, releasing the singles on YouTube, that was just kind of, I don't know, just to start throwing stuff out there without like officially releasing it on like streaming services and all that. Just like putting it on YouTube. And those songs like I like, but they definitely they more showcase my learning, I think.
Gotcha.
Like I still feel like I'm learning how to do this stuff. And like I think the ideas are pretty good, but just in terms of like creating songs, putting sounds into songs, that process like is very, and how the mixes and how the masters should be, and the pacing and that sort of stuff has just bogged me down for the past like year and a half, 2 years. But I think I'm starting to reach some clarity, hopefully, and I think my next release will probably involve more what I'm looking towards, which is like the electroacoustic mixed with ambient, mixed with like IDM and house, like more rhythmic stuff.
Gotcha.
More of like an eclectic thing, maybe. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I think I went like a month or like a month and a half without really making much music recently, and I just started again, and I feel like the stuff I'm working on right now, I'm actually pretty excited about, or feel pretty happy with.
Cool. So you're now in kind of like a new incubation phase, kind of for some, more stuff.
Hopefully. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully. It's hard to tell. It's like, I mean, one day you feel like really good about it, and then the next day you're like, oh, this is horrible. Like, what?
Yeah, these things come and go. And it's crazy too, because a lot of this you do really do yourself. I mean, of course, with the new tape, you've collaborated with Bud Tapes and, releasing that, and Emmett, who I will ask a little bit more about later. But yeah, would you generally say like, I mean, I was getting ahead of myself there, but you are mixing and mastering and sometimes doing video, and I know your brother did some artwork on some of the stuff, right?
Yeah, he's a photographer. I use his photos for a lot of stuff. Like all the singles and the album cover are his photos.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of them are quite striking. And a lot
he's
of them,
cool. Yeah, it's cool. He hasn't been doing it for very long either. He's really good at it. Yeah.
No, and I love how you kind of like thematically tied those singles. And even how you tied those singles in this EP with like even just this like typeface or whatever.
Yeah, it's mainly because like I've been looking for like a font to use, and I'm so particular about that sort of stuff. And I was trying to find like a free font that I could use, and I was just like, "Fuck it, I guess I actually have to buy a font." And so I bought that font, and I was like, "All right, I'm making the most out of it."
Yeah, exactly. Might as
But
well.
now, dude, honestly, one of the reasons I stopped releasing the singles was because like I felt like that EP was kind of the like end of that font. You know, like this is the last time I'm using the font,
Exactly.
and now I have no font to use for the singles, so it makes no sense. But
so you need to find
it's how I feel. So
yeah, it's like you should do it kind of like Kanye does Yeezy season. That would be fun.
I don't know what that is.
I mean, it's nothing even rigid. Like literally, he'll just come out with like a single, and then it'll be like it's Yeezy season, and you know, it'll just have this
Okay.
whole different promotional thing. But I don't know. It was the first thing that came to mind.
Maybe I'll look into that.
Yeah, maybe do. But between that, I also wanted to ask a little bit about this whole Oaf Games thing. This was such a
Oh
surprise.
yeah.
And that seems like where a lot of your attention has been going lately with that. So can you kind
Yeah.
of
I
describe
mean,
your role in that? And
oh yeah. Well, my role is not. I'm not doing much. I'm kind of the you know the bottom oaf. You know,
the
the
bottom
lowest
Oaf.
oaf on the totem pole. But it's. I mean, like yeah, I'm super stoked about the game. It's like Bigsby. It's with my two friends, Bigsby and Zealand, and Bigsby it was kind of his idea and his like vision for a really long time, and we had talked about it every once in a while. You know, like let's just like you know spend a few hours every day, designated time, and we just started doing it every day, and yeah, it's I don't know. I'm stoked about it. Like haven't really had much time to work on it lately because I've started working and I've been just within this past week things have been really hectic. I like left a job and I started two new jobs, and yeah, it was kind of stressful, and I
Yeah, I
you
can
know
imagine.
and yeah, the last job I had was like super soul sucking, and I had like no time to work on the game and no time to work on music either. That's why I haven't really been making music for the past. And any free time I had, I wanted to spend on the game, but ended up not really being able to work on the game anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's the
But
thing.
I hopefully will be getting more into the swing of it soon.
Awesome. Well, regardless,
I mean, Bigsby's going in. He's working like 10 hours a day on it.
Oof.
He's really
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
great to hear.
It's happening.
Am I to understand you'll be making music for it?
I will
Too
be,
much
and Bigsby has been too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I mean, yeah. The idea was that I would be in charge of it, but since I just haven't really had too much time for it, Bigsby just we all make music. Zealand makes music too. He makes
Okay.
really sick pop punk.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, he's like a banger machine. He makes only bangers.
Really? That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I'd love to see those. Like, I mean, I obviously I don't know a whole lot about gaming or obviously I know a little bit about gaming, but I don't know a whole lot about like game design and stuff
I mean,
like
neither
that.
do I.
Well, you're taking the opportunity to learn. So can you kind of shed some light on what the game is? Like, you know,
Yeah.
because so far I've seen little
I
screenshots here and
think
there. Are you ready to say anything about that or?
yeah, I mean like Bigsby is super inspired by like what's that? What's the Elder Scrolls game before Oblivion? Morrowind?
Morrowind,
It's like
yeah.
Morrowind, Oblivion. I've played Oblivion. It's like those kind of games, but like when you play them without playing the main quest is kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Like more focused on this, like the stories and the missions, like dialogue with NPCs,
Yeah.
uh, figuring out things you have to do, like spells,
Yeah.
stones,
Kind of some lore in there too.
magic, cults. Oh yeah, there's a game called Cruelty Squad, which we're also very inspired by. It's this modern, I haven't played it, but the aesthetic of it is very like, it's like intentionally grotesque and
Oh.
like, PS1 type graphics. Um it's really great. It's really cool. Uh and we're kind of we're going for a style that's in between that and like Morrowind, I think,
Okay, I
visually,
gotcha.
except more red. Everything's red.
I have kind of noticed that with like the little things you've been putting up on the Instagram.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
like red.
You like red. Good to know.
Mhm.
No, I'm very interested to hear about that. I actually hadn't heard about that game you mentioned before, so I'll have to look that up
Check
after
it
this.
out, dude. It's real, and it's one guy too. That's the other thing that like it is inspiring for us. Is like it's a guy who just he's like, I'm making a game,
Hmm.
and it's becoming really successful. It's like anyone can just decide to learn how to do this stuff, and the software is all free. Like if you feel like doing it, you can just do it.
Yeah,
Like
it's interesting too, specifically with musicians. I have noticed that there is a little bit of a correlation between like musicians that like also make games, like whether those
hmm,
are big scale or small scale, whatever. But like a good friend of mine that I grew up like making music with or whatever, she was working on a game for the longest time, and I don't know if she still is now, but it's interesting because like it is, I can see it being a similar process
mm,
as music, and like trying to piece parts together. And there's often a lot of like troubleshooting with music and songwriting, especially electronic songwriting at times. I feel like there is definitely an overlap to that sort of thing.
yeah, I think yeah, especially like electronic music. I mean, I think with being passionate about any sort of trade or like a creative type thing, you start to notice how things are kind of connected in like a sort of fractal kind of way,
Okay.
like oh, like learning how to do play this thing on guitar is similar to like using like a video editing software, but not in any sort of super obvious way, but like your brain works in this, I don't know.
I
But
totally get what you're saying though. Like I have a similar effect sometimes. Like as I find myself getting into other hobbies,
yeah,
I do find those little like
it's
weird.
like a reference point
It
to music,
absolutely.
or like whatever your core under like thing that you've dove into really deeply, when you that becomes your reference point for learning other things, because then you're like, oh, it's just like this, it's
Mhm.
just like learning that bass part or learning that drum part.
Yeah, and that's something I've definitely like come into some experience with in starting this show and all that, and starting to do more video editing, because
Uh-huh.
my video editing experience was pretty sparse before starting this out, and it's still not, anywhere near professional per se, but it is like I'm able to come at it from the viewpoint of when I'm making music, except it's sort of less, I mean, it obviously is a little less creative. I'm just, it's all about the conversation. I want the conversation to flow well. That's the end of the means. I'm not going to cut these up too much because I don't necessarily believe in that. I believe in the nuance of the conversation. That being
Nice.
said, I think it is a really interesting thing you kind of touch upon there. And it's also something that I feel like really bridges the gap between like the way I view your music personally. And like when you announced the Oaf Games thing, I kind of listened to this new EP with the lens of like, how would this fit in a video game? You know?
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think a lot of electronic composers are also, influenced by video game soundtracks and stuff like that. And I was like kind of listening to,
totally.
yeah, absolutely. And I know even us two personally have talked about video game soundtracks in the past, and our
Mhm.
shared love of Donkey Kong Country 2.
Of course, yeah. Everyone, yeah, that's like a classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and
Was
also just the vibe of old video games generally, like playing. I was mostly a GameCube kid
oh
and a
nice.
Super Nintendo, and like when you, it really those images they become embedded into your brain,
They really
and they
do.
almost become like yeah, they're almost like dream like memories in your brain when you're an adult. And um I think that sort of, it's almost like weird and eerie and also kind of like strangely beautiful in a weird way, you know, like. And I think that it's a common theme with modern electronic music. I mean, you see it all the time, like the reference to like old PlayStation games. And
Oh yeah.
um like it's really, I think it's a common experience with people who are like in their 20s and mid 20s now of having all these memories of like weird weird video games on like PlayStation and GameCube and stuff like that.
Oh,
Um
absolutely.
and so I would definitely say like playing video games and just exploring the weird worlds that like game developers created. I think that it influences my music both in terms of the literal music in the games and then also the games themselves.
Time period are really interesting because they come out of this like mid 90s to kind of mid 2000s, era, I
Yeah,
guess, where they were still trying to figure out the limits of, or maybe not even the limits, but just like how far they could push the programming and all that. And I feel
yeah,
like there's a similar movement in music per se nowadays where people are going back on like, that early digital, you know, path or something like that, and are now
yeah,
trying to kind of, intentionally deconstruct that sort of thing. Whereas in the beginning, it wasn't necessarily about
right,
deconstructing, it was about pushing limits enough until you could just get the
yeah,
zaniest, craziest thing, I guess.
right.
You
Well, yeah,
know?
I feel like it was a, at the time it was like a pure excitement about the technology, probably, like now things are more about, they seem at least to be really focused on refinement,
Mm-hmm.
and like the graphics and stuff, making really convincing graphics. But when, I'm assuming like when this stuff, 3D video games were just starting to be made, it seems like there is more of just like, oh, we can make these 3D worlds, like what, like making a cool world for people to explore. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of, I like the idea of music being like an internal world that you're exploring. And I think it's also that vibe is something I think we're trying to capture with at Oaf Games. And and that's, and like games like Oblivion and Morrowind, like you're exploring this world and it's very, I don't know, it's very deep. And then the graphics, the imperfect graphics, they
Everybody
just
remembers
add this
those.
like, for some reason it just makes it so great somehow, like
Yeah.
in the comedic sense, but also there's something else about it. I don't even know if it can be described, not
Yeah,
by
that's
me
the
at
thing.
least.
And that's what I feel like is very interesting about game design in general. Like, I mean, there's that whole
Mhm.
pastiche of like thinking about sound design, and people are like, the best sound design is the one that you can't tell is there, something like that. And some people think a lot there
Mhm.
seems to be this movement in game making now where it's kind of a similar thing. It's like that it's somewhat transparent. Like you can't really, you're supposed to not tell it's there.
Uh-huh.
It's complete immersion. but I find that a lot of the games that I'm returning to are unabashedly like just crazy. They have some sort of like very, I don't want to say old school, because I think some games do really interesting new things with old sort of ideas, I guess. One that comes to mind is like Undertale or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that's been very interesting to me with video games, especially with something like Oblivion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear, obviously, that that's something that you guys are drawing upon. So I'm really
Oh,
excited to
totally.
see
Yeah.
how that all is coming out. So
Oh yeah, you're gonna be
yeah.
in it too. We're putting anyone who wants to be in it. Yeah.
I look forward to that. Anybody that watches this video too, whoever that may
Uh,
be.
maybe, I don't know. I think so. I don't. I have to discuss out the other oafs. I
We'll
can't
have to
remember.
see how big this
Like,
video gets.
yeah, but I don't know.
Maybe it won't.
Maybe
Maybe it won't.
follow us on Instagram.
Exactly. And what's that Instagram handle?
I think it's Oaf Games
Oaf
official.
Games. Yeah. I mean, I'll link it obviously in the video
Sweet.
too. So I'll link whatever you
Sweet.
need me
We'd
to.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because it seems like, I can tell that you guys are diving in, or you guys are putting in a whole lot of hours. And honestly, I kind
Totally.
of wanted
Yeah.
to circle back to what you were saying before about like, you know, starting work again and going into different jobs and stuff like that. Because something that I found myself doing recently, like
Yeah.
I don't have a new job per se, but they're trying me at a different position, which has a morning schedule. Whereas previously I was like closing all the time. I would always feel super, exhausted. I want to have a morning. I couldn't have an evening. So I think it was interesting that you brought up this fact about like musicians do kind of tend to need the afternoon and the evening, sometimes late evening as
Yeah.
well. So it was interesting for me that you brought that up. Like, kind of how
Yeah.
has your work with music changed throughout this time period?
Well, it's really, I mean, it's really lighting a fire under me, that like I gotta get moving if I want to, make a career out of doing these creative projects.
Mhm.
Um, and just getting a taste of what I don't want to do.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I
important too.
don't like I like yeah, and I like learning from working and working day jobs and it's not like the worst thing. I mean, the job I had before was not a good it was not a good job. The
Mhm.
establishment, it was not a good place. It was unorganized and
I'm sure we've all had jobs like that. At least
yeah.
one,
I
you know.
got the new jobs I have now are very nice.
That's
I like where I'm working now.
that's good.
But still, like I don't, the life I hope to live is one where I can, make a living off of these creative projects. But also just learning to allot my time better and like it's like I can't waste any time now, like I need to, and also not letting the exhaustion from work preventing me from making music, not like giving in to just wanting to like you know eat shitty food and
Yeah.
go to sleep, which is what I end up doing most of the time after work.
But occasionally, something will spark in you where you're like, no, I gotta like eat a nice meal or
Yeah.
set myself up.
Yeah, and then also just like waking up in the morning too and trying to get stuff done, just like trying to, you know, because to before when I was like unemployed, I was trying to think of music as a full-time job, and I
Yeah.
was, putting in the hours I think of a full-time job, but without the organization of getting things. Oh my god,
Good Lord.
dude.
I closed the blinds so I wouldn't get a glare, and
Uh-huh.
he loves the window. I should have just kept him locked out so that he didn't interrupt this, but it'll make a funny little thing.
It's okay.
Anyways,
Yeah.
leading back into what you were saying. No, I think it's something that I find incredibly, I don't know, maybe it's boring for a lot of people, and I hope that doesn't come out that way in this interview, but I do think part of the reason I did start this whole interview process was just to hear from a lot of other musicians and artists in general, um, you know, what it's like balancing everything, you know,
Yeah.
because a lot of the
Yeah.
time, all the people I'm talking to, I mean, so far I've only talked to you and Emma, but you know, learning from multiple people just how they balance, you know, their personal life, their creative life, their work life is something I find incredibly interesting, because everybody does it
Mhm.
differently, but there are some kind of truths, I feel like, you know, and one of them
Yeah.
is waking up early and having to reconcile with the fact that waking up early is a thing you need to do, and like just
Yeah.
often staying up late too.
Yeah, like exactly. Because like when inspiration strikes at night, which it often does, like you stay up late working on something, and then you still want to wake up early too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but
Yeah.
a lot of everyone has to deal with that stuff, and like I'm grateful that I even have. It's the problem I'm grateful to have,
Yeah.
to like be like, oh, I have all these things I want to do. Like that's cool. So, it's nothing to complain about, but it is like it's really just confusing to navigate. And then
Yeah.
also, I mean, part of the reason I was getting so bogged down about not releasing anything is because I was like, oh, I'm working on music like all day, every day. And from the outside viewpoint, like, what do I have to show for it?
Yeah.
Like this is all just on my computer. Like
Yeah.
that's it. It's just me and my computer. That's who knows about it.
Yeah.
Like,
That's the truth for a lot
uh,
of people. I remember talking to
yeah,
Emma about that in our last interview, how she felt like, you know, she considers herself a musician, yet there was this kind of gap, you know, where like, where's the
yeah,
music, you know? And I feel like
yeah,
that's,
kind of like a cognitive dissonance almost. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
it's a
not quite,
cognitive
but
yeah.
it's like I mean, it's because music in an ideal world, like you don't, it's about an experience that's very like deep and
Mhm.
profound, and it has nothing to do with I mean, to a lot of people, it does, depending on your interpretation of music, but it's, know, it's it's unrelated to these, physical problems like making money
Mhm.
and, all this stuff. Depending on the music you make, obviously.
Yeah.
But you have to worry about those things when making music
Mhm.
if it's what you want to do all the time, you
Yeah.
know. You have to think about how you're going to make a living doing it. And there are some paths to take, but it's really it's very confusing how to step onto those paths, and most of the paths you have to really just do completely yourself, it
Mhm.
seems. I mean, I have no idea, like it's very confusing, but it's exciting. Yeah, I don't know.
I think
It's
most
just
creators would
and
empathize with you.
obvious. Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, everyone who's like trying to create, they feel the same. And then yeah, like obviously like COVID, you know, it just is making it so, and everyone's dealing with it, so it's like
Yeah.
making it all the more confusing. So
And we're getting even more creative people, you know.
yeah.
It's funny. I went to there's a vintage guitar store about 2 blocks away from me that I try not to spend too much time at.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking with one of the guys there, and he was saying something about like, you know, it was interesting when this whole thing started. We were really scared that we were going to go out of business, and then as the months went on, more and more people were buying guitars, and like people would
Yeah.
be buying like these vintage guitars as their first guitars, which is a horrible idea. But you
Uh-huh.
know, but still, you know, it's something that I have a lot of I spend a lot of time like contemplating, I guess, like how much new art we're gonna get, if anything. Emma brought up that idea of like that music's going offline after COVID, that it's all gonna be shows. Um, I guess.
Yeah, I think people are going to be really stoked to have experiences,
Yeah.
like in-person experiences. I think, yeah, people are itching for that sort of thing.
Are you excited to get back into that as well, from like a performance
Yeah,
standpoint?
that was something I was just starting to explore before COVID, and I mean, I'm excited to do maybe start doing like playing like hardcore bands or something like that live, because that's more. I honestly am not as into live music as most people, I think, unless it's like a punk or hardcore show, because that is really like heavy on the experience of
Yeah.
that the emotion and the feeling and the sort of you know the group thing that everyone's there to experience. But in terms of like electronic music, I am looking forward to, because it's going to be new for me,
Yeah.
like doing this stuff live. I've done it like once or twice
Yeah.
before COVID, and so yeah, it'll be new. I'm excited, and I think it'll be good because people will be looking forward to seeing that kind of thing live, and so I'm looking forward to it. It'll be new,
I'm
be a new
glad.
thing for
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Because it was funny. Like I saw I don't know if that was your first or second performance as ends at the alternative library at
I
one
think that
time.
was my first and last.
Your first and last.
Yeah.
No, but it was a very this might sound like I'm overstating it, but I will say it was somewhat transformative for me, because I was like,
Really.
yeah, because I don't know, like I remember watching that and having been in a band with you previously. Maybe I'm giving
Mhm.
away too much in the interview, but I don't know. The whole point of this interview series is to just kind of like demystify relationships between musicians, I guess. I don't know.
Cool.
Maybe I'm getting into it too much. Anyways, watching that set though, you were using, there was an unwound sample you put in there, and
Hmm.
just seeing your setup with the bass guitar and your laptop, and then I think you had the chord mini log with you as well, and just
Yeah.
seeing how those three things came together to create this wonderful, like transcendental ambient sort of sound. It was really,
Uh,
it was really moving. I
Thank you.
thought
I
so.
appreciate that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really hope to see something like that again soon. We'll see, whenever that ends up happening. But yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. It will definitely happen again. It
Yeah,
will. Yeah.
just gotta
It's.
wait to see how this rollout happens.
Yeah. Exactly.
For sure. It's a big what if right
I mean, there might
now.
be. There might be. Right. I think the alternative library is doing
Yeah, because they're moving
shows
locations as well,
now, like
right?
outdoor shows. I think so. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
think they're doing outdoor shows. So maybe I could, yeah, maybe I could start trying to put together another one. That set actually, it's funny because Emmett, who runs Bud Tapes, booked that show
Oh,
or was
really?
coming to Bellingham and asked me to play with them. And though, like a couple of those ideas that I put together for that set, like the opening thing in that set became the first song on the EP. And
Really?
so yeah, and so it's like Emmett was kind of more involved in the EP because I made some of those songs for that set, which Emmett booked, and then Emmett released the tape too. So it was
Wow.
kind of, yeah, it's kind of
Kind of
cool.
like coming full circle.
Like, yeah, like a spiral.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. But yeah, no, I think the kind of final question I have, which I mean you've led into wonderfully, is kind of like how, I don't know, how that whole putting that tape out came about. Um, if you could shed some light a little bit on like what Emmett's involvement was in putting that out, besides what you've already said. But yeah, just kind of like what it's been like working with Bud Tapes through this whole thing.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, like it was very and it's very kind of straightforward, you know, like Emmett was just like he told me like that they would love to do it, and all I really had to do was send them the songs once they were done and make the album cover, and then they kind of just handled everything else.
Oh,
Uh
nice.
and that, I mean, yeah, that was kind of it. Like Emmett did promotion and like put it like out in some of the local shops in Portland and stuff like that. And we played in a band in high school together. So
Oh,
like,
wow.
yeah, we've known each other for a long time. So it was pretty just like a matter of me making the songs.
Yeah.
I spent like, it took me months afterwards after they brought it up with me for me to actually do it, just because of deciding which songs I wanted to use and
Mhm.
putting it together, and then like creating the album art. Um, yeah, and
It,
then like Emmett handled all the, you know, creating, you know, printing the tapes and stuff, and yeah,
maybe I'll have to talk to
yeah.
them as well, because it seems like they have a pretty cool setup
They
going
would be a
on there.
great person to interview on this
Mm,
show, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, from it was funny when I posted about getting this tape in the mail. Um, kind of friend of a friend of mine I met once. He used to live in LA, but is now based out of Portland. I posted this. He's like, "Yo, you know Bud Tapes? Like, how do you know them?" I'm like, "Oh, my buddy just released an EP with them." So, yeah,
Ah,
but they seem like they cover a lot of different kind of they cover quite a range of music, and I'd love to chat with them. So maybe I should hit Emmett up. But
you should. I bet they'd be down, and they make cool music, and they are like super supportive of tons of artists, and yeah, their label releases tons of great music. Like they would be, yeah, and they started it all themselves. Like I think, yeah, they'd be a great person to talk to.
well, maybe I'll just have to send him a message right after we're done.
Should.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it sounds like,
do
whoa,
it.
just knocked the hell out of my mic. Well,
Uh,
it sounds like this EP was kind of like a culmination of a lot of things, just in general, you know,
totally.
through Emmett putting that out and y'all being, high school friends, you having this vault of music for a long time. Um,
Mhm.
what do you think is going to be next? Besides what you already have going on.
Yeah. Well, I am thinking there's a lot. I mean, again, I'm thinking about the same bogged down problem of,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm more optimistic now, but I think I might end up doing another even shorter EP, just to sort of like show where the non-ambient music is heading,
Okay.
or I might do again like a longer, more eclectic LP with ambient and rhythmic IDM and like poppy, like synth pop sort of stuff. Um, and the other thing I'm thinking about too is just releasing like a huge collection of all the stuff I've been working on for the past couple of years, is just like not thinking it as like an album, but more just like, here's a collection of stuff I've been working on.
Yeah.
My friend told me this, how John Coltrane describes albums as like postcards
Yeah.
of of the, you know, the journey of making music, like where you've been.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, I should get that postcard out. Like, here's what I've been
Yeah.
doing for the past couple of years.
Why not? Screw it.
And
Because
yeah, Spiral is like kind of filled that purpose in a way, but there's still a lot of other stuff that, you know, and I guess like I'm almost like insecure about a lot of the stuff I've been working on, because it's, you know, since it's really it's showing what I'm learning,
hmm,
which means it's flawed, you
yeah.
know. Um
All music
so
is in a way, though. So
true. True.
Yeah,
But yeah,
except for
there's,
John
I mean,
Coltrane, but anyways, go
perfection.
on.
Yeah, well, there's gonna be stuff to come for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what it's gonna be.
Yeah. Well, regardless, I think even like a compilation of sorts, like you were saying, would be wonderful. Like, kind of makes me think of who is it? I think it's Lil Ugly Mane, that rapper producer kind of type guy, makes that weird cloud rap sort of stuff. He dropped a couple of like kind of compilation throwback, just like a very specific eras, and it's like I think there's one that's like a 4-disc album of just like
Yeah.
all these different wacky beats he made. So I think even something like that might be cool, and you might find that some songs you weren't as into people love.
Yeah, yeah, that could
It's strange
happen.
how that
Yeah.
happens. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
regardless, I think a lot of people are excited to see where that goes, and
Sweet.
don't get too bogged down.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell you need to
I
release things super frequently. What I'm trying to say is whatever it is, we're
believe
excited
in
to hear
yourself.
it. Believe in yourself. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm trying to say. So, because we
Yeah.
believe in you, God damn it.
Oh, thanks, Kristen.
All righty. Well, I think that makes a wonderful place to
I
end
believe
off
in
on
you
today.
too, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I actually just started making music
Okay.
again a little bit more frequently. So
Hell
we'll see.
yeah.
We'll see what ends up happening. It's been a weird incubation period for me as well. I keep saying that, incubation period.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's too weird.
Well,
a
it's
term or
yeah.
not.
I mean it's a pretty applicable word for what is going on right now with a lot of people being isolated and working on creative people working on their craft.
Absolutely.
They're incubated. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today. And I'll just
Thanks
say it
for
again.
having me.
We're all excited to see what ends up coming on down the line. And for the moment now, I know for sure that I'm enjoying the EP, and anybody who hasn't checked it out, make sure to check that out at Gabe's Bandcamp under Ends, which will have
It's
linked
actually
below.
not on my Bandcamp. It's only on Bud Tapes' Bandcamp.
That's right. It's only
now.
on Bud Tapes Bandcamp right now, but you do have the singles on your Bandcamp, right?
It is on like Spotify and everything too.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Well, we'll make sure to link to those.
Everything's just like scattered around. Oh, sorry. There's a delay.
No, I apologize. But yeah, either way, I'll make sure to link to everything. And I apologize for the weird connection issues we've been having. I don't know.
Conversations all Friday.
We've done the best with it we can. I'll review the footage, and
yeah.
I think we did pretty solid though. Oh.